The Lakers got swept, and it wasn't like they just got embarrassed type of sweep, but it was still a sweep. Because it's the Lakers, everyone's going to be talking about it nonstop and being dramatic and having all these hot takes to say, but it boils down to actually being very simple. In a vacuum, the Lakers season was a good season for them. If you look at how things were going when the year was starting, it was basically looking like the AD and Bron era was over, and it was over with a whimper, not a bang. That would have been really sad and a disservice to those two as players, considering what they have been able to accomplish and establish the 2 years before the Westbrook trade. You get a title one year, and the other year ended in failure, but that was mostly circumstantial due to injury. But the Lakers were still a good and respectable team that hung their hats on defense versus whatever the hell they had going on the court last season, and really this season up until February. But you also have to address that it's the Lakers. Not winning a title is a failure, especially when you get as close as the conference finals. LeBron himself said that it is not a successful season for him unless he is holding up that Larry OB. I do think while it is disappointing that they kind of let go such a good chance to win a ring, I do think they have a lot to build on for next year. I think this postseason push show which of their players they can hang on to and which ones are expendable depending on whatever options are available to them in this offseason. Let's start with the main guy, LeBron James. You can say, AD was better or whatever you want to try and diminish what LeBron was doing out there, but the guy continues to be remarkable every year. The standards that this guy is held to as a 38-year-old are ridiculous, like usual, and more often than not, he meets those standards. I'm going to touch on the retirement stuff a bit later, but this guy is taken for granted by people who claim that they love the game of basketball. Some of y'all really like drama and hating on players more than y'all actually like watching basketball, but that's neither here nor there. His closeout game was incredible to watch and just shows that he still has something in the tank. He just can't have it on at all times. LeBron was in year 20 with the most mileage ever, playing on a torn foot, and was still able to deliver at times when his team needed him the most. I expect him to still be almost as good as he was earlier in the season, especially if there's a real team behind him and he can take it easy for a good portion of the year rather than having to exhaust himself just to give his team a chance to make the playoffs. I think he definitely will be elite next year and still probably pretty good the year after that. Barring catastrophic injury, this guy can honestly be an effective player for the next 5 years, which is kind of crazy for us to process, and that's why we have so much trouble actually processing it. I do think the Lakers need to prepare for the fact that he will likely only be playing 50 to 60 games a season for the rest of his career though. Anthony Marshawn Davis. I am not going to lie, his conference finals performance is a little bit upsetting. His lack of energy and consistency on the offensive end, those are real issues, and he played his part in the loss along with many other dudes. That being said, the way Anthony Davis is evaluated since coming to the Lakers is pretty ridiculous. Every year I see insane trade proposals for guys who underrate him because the media spends so much time talking down on him rather than talking about what he does well. Last year I saw Bulls fans saying they wouldn't trade Zach LaVine for freaking Anthony Davis because AD is always hurt. We need to check how many games Zach LaVine has missed in the past few years, or should I just let that go? Anyways, AD gets dookied on for his consistency to score over 20, but I feel like anyone who was really watching him on a game-to-game basis can appreciate how otherworldly he was on defense this postseason run. I think that same energy wasn't there in the conference finals, but the first 2 rounds, this guy was on another level in terms of defense. A lot of fans aren't taking that into account when talking about his performance, and it honestly does him a huge disservice. Being able to basically will your team to a top-ranked defense while also being liable to drop 20 or 30 points at any given moment is an incredible player anybody would love to have, but his name is just in the mud because people love to hate on him, and I really don't think his perception will ever match his reality. It is a little frustrating for him to have let go of this opportunity too, because I feel like another title would have been great for his own personal legacy, especially his legacy as a Laker. If he had 2 rings and contributed to those, especially the way he was playing this year, then there was really nothing you could take away from him because he basically got robbed for a Defensive Player of the Year award in 2020 anyway. So these next 2 years, hopefully he comes out strong and fixes his jumper so he can contribute to another title and really move him to that upper echelon of players. Anyways, Lakers need to account for the fact that he won't play every game in a season either, and bring in the appropriate personnel to account for that. I think the AD at center situation has kind of run its course, and if they could bring in a stretch 5 and would really be able to help AD out and have him able to get some of that swag back that he had in 2019 and 2020, that would do him a lot of good for the regular season. I guess I can talk about D'Angelo Russell. Since the series ended, I couldn't help but think about how much he has stunk it up overall in the playoffs. Then I saw someone mention those back-to-back-to-back threes he hit in the Grizzlies series, and I was like, oh wait, and I remember that he definitely did some good. It's just that this series is so fresh in everyone's mind, including myself, that it's easy to forget that. That being said, he deserves to be dookied on for his performance. He got into a mid-off with Bruce Brown, and losing that is definitely not a good look for someone who's trying to get paid this offseason. I remember when Kyle Kuzma and Michael Porter Jr. got into a mid-off in the bubble in the Western Conference Finals. It was kind of embarrassing because Kuzma lost that battle. Anyways, I think the Lakers will look to upgrade at his position, but bringing him back as a backup plan on a cheaper deal, that wouldn't be the worst thing for them if they could get him for the right price, and they can maybe flip him later if somebody else comes available. I just think if I had the option, I would move on for him because overall, I would say his performance in the playoffs was lackluster, and you're trying to win a title. Vando will be back. There were some times where he wasn't really playable in the playoffs, but I don't really mind that for him. His contract was small, and every series just ain't for every player. I think he did what he was asked and did what he could. If he's forced to spot up in the corner while being left wide open, of course, that's on him for being a bad shooter, but I'd say part of that is on the coaching staff for not utilizing him as well as they could have when there were other non-shooters on playoff teams who weren't just stuck in the corner waiting to launch up a brick like Vando was so many times in the playoffs. I really hope this man doesn't play himself and lose out on generational wealth just because he doesn't develop a corner three like PJ Tucker did. He's a great guy to have in the regular season, and his energy goes a long way. He will be a nice guy for the Lakers to have when they aren't playing for their life every night like they basically have been since February. Austin Reeves, this dude's contract is being matched, straight up. Even if he doesn't improve, which I don't think will happen, I think he has a few skills left to refine, but even if he doesn't improve, he will be a great player to have on his contract. He can only get paid so much due to being an undrafted player. Props to the Lakers scouting team for getting him. He's proven to be war ready and play well in the playoffs, which you can't say for everybody and that doesn't just go for the Lakers, that goes for many teams. He's proven that he's going to be a pivotal guy as the LeBron and AD era winds down. There's no point in picking up an undrafted player like him and not matching his contract when you're already over the cap anyways. Let me not get into the nitty gritty of the offseason for the Lakers. Maybe I'll save that for another video. Basically, I think they have one more year left in them to contend for sure, and in many ways I feel like next year will kind of be the last shot for them. I guess you can say hashtag the last chance, but it'll be tough as some teams are in the mix right now and they'll likely get better too. But the Lakers actually have tradable salary and tradable draft picks right now. They can trim some fat and bring back some good rotational players for this last push for a title. To keep it simple, I think they need to re-sign most of their pending guys, use the salary of Beasley and Bamba along with some draft capital, and bring in a guy, for example, like a Buddy Hield. Turn two players that don't have any use for you into one that could be war ready for the playoffs. Focus on your health and you go from there. Health will always be pivotal for a team that has Anthony Davis on it and now LeBron James as well. To be honest, it's kind of crazy that they got swept when I really sit here and think about it, but it makes sense considering it's like they were running on fumes. Of course, Denver is clearly the better team. They outperformed the Lakers in the clutch in all 4 games. Their superstar player outplayed the Lakers' superstar players for a majority of the series, and Denver just looks hungry. But remember, even though I picked incorrectly, I said the Lakers could get it done in 6. I said the second most likely scenario was Denver coming out and punching them in the mouth and making it a short series, like 4 or 5 games, and that's essentially what they did. Overall, I think the Lakers will be a player next year. The offseason is going to have to go well for them, but I think they are in a way better position for that to happen this year than they were last year, where they had no leverage. They were clearly struggling to bring in players to help. Really, the only dudes that they signed were like kind of young dudes that were already on Clutch Sports, so it was kind of like the only guys they could get to come into LA. They were dudes that I wouldn't say they even took pay cuts. They were trying to prove themselves so they can get some good contracts. And for better or for worse, some guys, maybe Troy Brown has played himself into a better contract, but even that is a big if. But anyways, you have to remember, you have a huge market like LA, and they just went to the conference final. There may be some veterans that are willing to come in and take a pay cut in order to try and help them for that last push. They also won't be able to be bullied in trade negotiations like last year. I think everyone's faith in Rob Pelinka is restored after how he handled rebuilding that roster at the deadline. If you eliminate the offseason of the Westbrook trade, most of the time Rob has put in work. The 2021 roster didn't win it all, but to me they were better than the 2020 roster, at least talent-wise. Other factors obviously played a role, but Rob is able to put pieces around LeBron and AD, and being in Los Angeles is only going to help. I'll briefly touch on this LeBron potential retirement thing because without him, none of this matters anyway. I don't think he's retiring this offseason. I think he is setting the stage to do so, and he has essentially never talked about it prior to his post-game conference after Game 4. I mean, he's alluded to it a couple times, especially when there's like times where, LeBron's lost in the finals a lot, so he clearly shows his physical and mental fatigue whenever that happens. After this series, it's very obvious he is physically and mentally fatigued, right? And I'm sure he does feel like he needs to take some time off to figure out his next move. He's a business within himself, so all these decisions that he makes has to be planned out and talked with about his whole operation. So that being said, it makes more sense for LeBron to give it at least 2 more years in the NBA. If he sticks with the Lakers, Bronny will be playing at USC next year. Then the following season, he gets a chance to play with or against Bronny on an NBA floor, and then the All-Star game, I think that's going to be in LA that year as well, so that could kind of just be the celebration of LeBron, the celebration. I'm sure they'll come up with some crazy name for it. They'll find a cool name for it. So if you just look at all that, timeline-wise, it makes sense for LeBron to play for 2 more years, and he'll still be a very good player for those next 2 years anyway, so it makes sense. Just want to appreciate y'all. I got like 45 subscribers right now. That's crazy. I'm like doubling every week, every couple weeks or so. Imagine if Mr. Beast could double his followers every couple weeks, right? He'd be going crazy. So, you know, you got to look at the silver lining. I may not have a lot of people looking at me, but I got some. So, man, like I said, we get to a certain amount, somebody's getting a free jersey. It's going to be a nice jersey. It's not going to be a weak, little cheap one. It's going to be have some real quality. Going to cost a pretty penny for it. But, you know, appreciate y'all. Just keep it up. I'm going to keep it up and y'all keep it up. All right.